So let's go ahead and get started. Macy, thank you for recording. We're here again for another feedback session to gather input from the members on topics that they want to discuss more at the public council meetings. As a reminder, these feedback sessions are not deliberative, and the feedback gathered will be summarized at the subsequent public meetings. And we are also recording these sessions, and we'll post them to the Climate Act website. So the topics that we have to cover today are electricity, climate justice, and the economy-wide chapters. Due to staff availability, we'd like to cover economy-wide first. And so we can just, it seems that members seem to be pretty eager to jump in with feedback. So we don't have intro slides prepared. We just thought we would jump right in. So I'll go ahead and open it up for any feedback that council members have on economy-wide.
It's the perfect chapter.
It actually is rather good. So kudos to whoever.
Just take the victory and move on.
Kudos to the main developers. I just have a few comments on it, and nothing critical, more just observations generally speaking. I just some formatting issues which I'll follow up in an email on later to make a few points clearer. But in particular, one thing that jumped out at me, I know on page 3 under structure of the program to ensure compliance with statewide emissions limits, you list the various sectors. And I know agriculture is not to be included, but I think it'd be helpful to make that a little clearer. Casual observer and reader looking at this would see the bullet list. I know when I first saw the bullet list, I actually wrote a note, why is agriculture not here? And then when I ran through it, I realized, oh, that's why. So in some way, making that a little clearer may be helpful for other reviewers and other individuals looking at this. That's one comment. There's reference to the there's some confusion on the percent of benefits of clean energy investments going to disadvantaged communities. I'm not sure if this comment is just to this chapter, but at one point we write 35%. At another point we write 40%. I know the target is 35%. That's the threshold, and the goal is 40. But just making sure we're consistent throughout, I think, will be helpful in reinforcing that message. If we switch from 35 to 40 and not provide that little additional clarity as to what the 35 and 40 mean, that might cause some confusion later on. And I just had one final comment in the bullet on regional equity towards the last page. There's a discussion, sentence reads, this could occur, for example, if carbon intensive sources are concentrated in portions of the state, if particular areas have less access to technologies to reduce GHG emissions, and so on and so forth. A slight tweak to that I think would be helpful. Instead of saying if carbon intensive sources, say in areas of the state where carbon intensive sources are centralized. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little more helpful, particularly when it comes to disadvantaged communities. Might give that a little more precision. But those are my only comments for the section. I thought it was overall really well put together and clear and concise. So Vlad, I'm looking at you. Great job in putting this together.
Jared.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Jared.
Rory, it's Jared. One question on that last comment. You know, I think the centralized works for power plants. Mm-hmm. I was also thinking, or we were also thinking, transportation, for example.
Oh, I see.
Places with less access to electric vehicles.
Adjacent to highways, for example.
Right.
if you live next to the
So,
crossroads, for
so,
example.
actually, that's maybe covered more on the particular areas have less access to technologies to reduce. That's more the EV part. Let's think about that.
In my mind, for that one, downstate a heat pump is fine, basically everywhere, and in other parts you need, maybe not need, but potentially need, let's say, backup heat, right? There's some sort of supplementary source of heat very close. So there are some of those discrepancies in terms of the same technology fully fits the bill or partially fits the bill, things like that, I guess. On the access to technology pieces being different parts of the state, that's what I had in mind there. But anyway, we can certainly work on that.
Yep.
All right. Any other comments on economy-wide? Okay. Then we can go back to electricity then. Any comments on electricity?
Just want to thank you, Sarah, for adding affected workers and unions to the key stakeholders piece. And again, across the board, any other places where we have that, and obviously the labor standards across the board. So I just want to put that in because I'm going to have to leave by 2:30 today. But thank you for that, Sarah. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Mario. Rory, do you have any comments on electricity?
Hey, Sarah, this is Ann Reynolds. I just am listening temporarily from the phone as long as I can. I stepped out of my other place.
Do you have any feedback on electricity?
I don't for now. I'm good. I'll let others talk.
Great.
So
I was saying, Ann, when did you join? Were you here for the economy-wide conversation?
Did the economy-wide conversation just happen in 5 minutes?
Yes.
Then I missed it.
Okay. So maybe we'll come back to that. How long will you be with us?
Till 2:30.
Okay.
Well, I'll make my points on this one quick. Just a few points. So a couple of areas, most notably on page 11 and another point later on where hopefully I'll find, page 11 and page 19, where we mentioned microgrids. I think it'll be important to either attach an emissions-free or a low emissions caveat to those microgrids, if at all possible. Leaves a little bit of room for interpretation based on my recollection of what I was reading. And to be clear, that's page 11 and page 19 where microgrids are mentioned. They are neither, there's no qualification on the level of emissions expected from those assets. Second item I have on page 12, there's a recommendation for an annual megawatt permitting goal for ORES. I haven't had time to chew that over, but I have some concerns over that. Not entirely sure if an annual megawatt goal may be best. And it's something I just love to discuss in more detail and possibly bring in Hutan Movani, who runs ORES, and inform him of the potential for that and see if that's something that makes sense. But I wanted to just flag that for the group. Let's see. On page 13, one moment, where we talk about interconnection. We also mentioned right-sizing human resources at utilities. I think it'll be important both here and elsewhere when we talk about human resources to make sure it's not just at utilities, but throughout the energy sector. So private sector, utilities themselves, state agencies as well. Just kind of expanding that a little bit to ensure that there's a recognition that not just the utilities are involved in the interconnection process, but other organizations as well play a role. On page 17, I have 2 points. The first related to broadband. Some of the utilities have worked to co-locate broadband with certain investments in utility infrastructure, thus lowering the cost for deploying broadband in certain areas. I think that's something worth mentioning on page 17 in the broadband item, particularly since it's in the electric section. So something to highlight. And then the recommendation that DCAS and New York State work together, I feel like that should be part of all strategies where applicable. I think this is the first time I've noticed it explicitly called out in the chapters I've had a chance to review. On page 18, expanding CCA eligibility. I request removal of the caveat within a year. And then on page 20, I'm a little worried. Oops, sorry. Yeah, on page 20, I'm a little worried that we won't be able to do what's requested here by the end of 2022. So we might want to update that deadline from 2022 to 2023 or beyond. This is in relation to energy storage deployment. And then I have a note here. I'm not sure where it references. Oh, here it is. Page 21. We talk a good deal about SF6 and its potential impact on climate. And I just want to caution that we may want to consider ensuring we have best in practice containment measures as a preliminary step in advance of full-on conversion. It's not entirely clear to me what the costs associated with removing SF6 equipment would be, or what the benefits could be. But I think if in the interim we recommend ensuring processes minimize leaks while we go through this transition, I think that'll be a helpful way of mitigating any near-term impacts while planning for long-term change. On page 28, when we talk about advanced demand side solutions, it occurred to me that in talking about the solutions, it would be helpful to provide the reader with a little more context. There's not much discussion here on the peaking issue as a whole and what the cause of it is. And so I suggest we consider including a narrative discussing either the load duration curve, highlighting the potential impact of peaking units, the duration in which they run, and the period for which demand would need to be reduced to limit their use. And I think that'll help in setting context for both the significance of the emissions associated during those peak periods and what the potential impact in demand would be from a customer perspective. It's not going to be, we need you to curtail use for 2 months. It's really more a few hours out of the year. So I think that'll be a helpful narrative if that's something we could incorporate in some way. And those are my main comments on the electric section.
Thank you, Rory. Any other comments on electricity? Anne, anything from you on electricity?
Nope.
Okay. So I think we can then move to climate justice. Any comments on this chapter?
Sorry, I actually don't have that chapter. I have gas transition. So I don't have any comments at this time.
Okay. Mario or Anne, any comments on climate justice?
I'm good for now, Sarah. I'm going to get some other stuff into you.
Great.
Same. I'm good.
Okay. And And so then if we want to circle back to economy-wide, is there anything additional that we want to add there? Anne, I'm not sure if you wanted to weigh in here.
I really didn't have edits to suggest. I think it looks good. I think it's comprehensive. I like that it says the council concludes that a cap and invest program is what we need. I don't know if the authors contemplated anything further, like what happens next if you decided not to put something in there, like a sentence of, so therefore X is directed to design a program that meets all the the criteria that are described in here. I was that's my inclination, but that's me, right? I'd like to take it a little step further to say, therefore, DEC is going to design something within X amount of time. But so I that was one question I had, just if that was contemplated and decided not to do that. One tiny suggestion, or maybe it's more an observation. I've been, like all of you, been getting many emailed letters from the New York Renews Coalition and about a cap and trade, and where it lists like certain things that a cap and trade policy should have. My reading of it is this has them. They asked for declining caps, LMI rebates, safeguards against raids. I don't know if it says anything about that. Labor protections and non-tradable facility-specific caps. And I think that the text has identified those same things. And there was just one place I thought, although I've probably lost where it is, where we're answering concerns from the Climate Justice Working Group about a market-based program allowing emission trading. And it does have, but then it references the design elements that would be intended to address that, which I think is good. I think it also might be worthwhile referencing other parts of the plan. I'm thinking about specifically for electricity, there's a whole section on, ratcheting down on emissions and I'm forgetting the exact language because it's not in front of me, the safe and gradual closure of certain generating facilities, subject to reliability, safety. Like, to me, that's also an answer to the criticism about the economy-wide, that there's also something else in the plan that's addressing the emissions from these individual facilities. And it might be good to say that in that same section. But other than that, that's all I have. I'm talking about page 5, if that helps.
Great, thank you. Vlad or Jared, do you want to respond to Anne's question on the contemplation of kind of further direction?
Sorry, I was on mute. Do we do that elsewhere? And to me, the CLCPA requires DEC to enact the regulations that are, I forget the exact words, in substantial part, I think, consistent with the scoping plan. And so we're not calling out each place where DEC will enact these regulations. I think, or that's we're not calling out the council directing DEC to do something, because that's not really a role of the council. The council produces a scoping plan. The CLCPA is what directs us, the law itself. So I just would want, to be consistent with what we say elsewhere in that regard. And I just sort of wonder if we go out a little bit further on this one, whether then that raises questions about elsewhere where the council is not providing that direction.
Right. Yeah, I hear that. As long as you feel like it is giving DEC enough direction to further explore and design this program, and it's consistent with the other chapters, that's fine with me. Just wondered if you had considered that.
Yeah, we'll go back and take a look at that, just make sure.
All right, any other comments on electricity, climate justice, or economy-wide? All right, not seeing any questions or hands raised for comments. I think we can close this session a little early. Thank you for your feedback.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thanks
Sarah.
Thanks
Thank you,
all.
everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
I know.